While I was out there mowing grass, I had the thought of our Independence Day coming up, America's 250th birthday. And I was thinking about the freedom we received as a nation 250 years ago from earthly powers. And I started thinking, I was like, we have even more freedom than what we was given 250 years ago as a nation. We have the freedom that God gave us. And if you go to Romans chapter 6, verse 14, it says, sin is no longer your master, for you no longer live under the requirements of law. Instead, you live under the freedom of God's grace. That is the most freedom you're ever going to get. God's grace is you're free. Your spirit is free. You're no longer a slave to sin. You're no longer a slave to Satan. God's grace has set you free. And you read verse 15, it says, well then, since God's grace has set us free from the law, does that mean we can go on sinning? Of course not. Don't you realize that you become the slave of whatever you choose to obey? You can be a slave to sin, which leads to death, or you can choose to obey God, which leads to righteous living. And that's the freedom. Why would you want to be a slave to sin? Why would you want to be a slave to what this world is giving you and offering you? Why would you want to be a slave to Satan? He's not going to get you nowhere except to hell. And you're going to be his little puppet here on earth. Experience the freedom of God's grace. Experience and live righteously through God's grace. If you want freedom, come to the Father and experience his grace.